So, Judge,
let me just add quickly, we're back on the record in Erickson v. Germantown School District. The appearances remain the same. It is 2:22 p.m. Prior to going off the record, Attorney Pollard had raised a potential rebuttal exhibit. We went off the record to so that he could share it with myself and Attorney Hitchcock Cross. I've received it and reviewed it. Attorney Hitchcock Cross, have you had a chance to receive, or did you receive it and have you had a chance to review it?
I have.
All right. Attorney Pollard, I believe you already made your argument for why it's rebuttal. So Attorney Hitchcock Cross, do you have an objection to it? And if so, what's the basis for it?
Yeah, I understand. I'm going to put it like this. We think that this would have been more appropriate to put to Ms. Wendt, but to the extent that it's not, we're not going to object one way or the other.
And I understand that argument. I think they could have done it one of two ways. The question that isn't answered, and I don't necessarily need an answer to, is whether I don't doubt that they didn't know what she would testify to. And since Ms. Altendorf is a party to this email, and it wasn't clear, at least to me, what she would testify to today, because this issue of who requested the meeting only came up today, I'm going to allow it to be shown to the witness, and Ms. Altendorf can be questioned on it.
Thank you. Ready to go then, Judge?
Yes, we are on the record. I apologize. Please go ahead with your cross.
No problem. Yep. Ms. Altendorf, I believe before we went off the record, we had been discussing the June 9th, 2021 letter from Ms. Wendt about her concerns for regarding Mr. Erickson. And you were asked whether you believe that her testimony that you had pressured her into writing this letter was untrue, and you said you did not believe that Ms. Wendt's testimony was true in this regard. I'm going to present on the screen what is we will call Exhibit R15. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And if you go down to the bottom, there's an email from Friday, June 4th, 2021 from Barb Wendt. Was this an email that was to you?
Yes.
And would you just read the email for the record?
Hello, Brittany. I would like to see if you had maybe 10 minutes to meet with me. I'm unavailable after work today, but I'm at MacArthur until 3, or I can meet you next week. Something has come to my attention, and I feel it is important to have a face-to-face meeting with you at your convenience. Thank you.
And it appears scrolling up that same day you responded saying, "Hi, Barb. I am more than happy to get out of my office on this beautiful day and talk with you. Does 1:30 p.m. work for you?" To which Barb responded, "Yes, thank you." And then you indicated, "On my way now." So did you in fact meet with Ms. Wendt on June 4th, 2021?
Yes.
And so she was the one requesting this meeting, correct?
Correct.
Now, when she said in her email, "Something has come to my attention and I feel it is important to have a face-to-face meeting with you," do you know what it was that she wanted to meet with you about?
Her concerns about Don.
Okay. And so you discussed those concerns with her at your meeting on June 4, 2021?
Yes.
At that meeting, was there any discussion about Ms. Wendt being a spy?
No.
Did you request that she write this letter about Mr. Erickson?
No, I told her that if she had concerns, she should put them in writing.
Okay, so she had emailed you saying that something had came up, and then she was discussing her concerns with you, and you asked her to put them in writing.
Correct.
Okay, so you hadn't reached out to her to solicit her to write this letter in any way. Is that fair to say? Okay, thank you. Another issue that came up was Billy Joe and her comp time. And I believe Attorney Hitchcock Cross had asked you if you knew what the balance was that was paid out. You had responded you weren't sure. Did you understand Attorney Hitchcock Cross's question to be referring to what was paid out after your meeting with Billy Joe in or around February 18 of 2021?
Yes.
Do you have any recollection of what that balance might have been?
No, I'm guessing it's I don't know. It's a couple $100.
Now, going back to when you first started at the district in July of 2020, were you alerted or did you become aware of employees having comp time balances?
Yes.
And like, what was a comp time balance? Can you just explain what that is?
Sure. If somebody earns comp time throughout the year and they don't use that time at the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th, they are paid out whatever is the balance that they have left on the time they didn't use.
At that time, did you become aware of any employees with comp time balances that you felt were very high?
Yes.
Were you informed of Billy Joe Mon having a comp time balance?
Yes.
Do you know approximately what that balance was as of at the end of the 2020-21 fiscal year?
Yes, it was about $29,000.
So Ms. Moan, so the district then cut a check to Ms. Moan for approximately $29,000 in comp time.
Correct.
Did you find that to be problematic?
I thought that was very problematic and excessive
Why?
because there was other people on the list that were being paid out comp time and it was, 1 to 5 hours. This number out of the 3 pages I had was extraordinary compared to everybody else.
Is comp time included in the district's budget?
No, because it's not known.
How do you budget for employees, like hourly employees? What is the practice to put that into the budget?
Sure, there's our Skyward system has calendars in them that basically takes the person's hourly rate and their calendar of work, and the system does the calculation and populates it into my budget. So,
For example, Ms. Moan's comp time was $29,000. That's outside the budget. Is that fair to say?
mhm.
When you took over as the Director of Business Services for the district in July of 2020, was the district facing a budget deficit?
Yes,
And what was the deficit?
over $3 million.
Meaning that the district's budgeted expenses for the next year exceeded the revenue by over $3 million.
Correct.
And obviously that probably is not a good thing, right?
That's not.
So were you tasked as the new business director with balancing the budget?
Yes.
Okay. Was this issue with excessive comp time, when you identified that issue, was that a factor or a fact which led to the district's change in policy regarding overtime?
To get prior approval, yes.
Okay. And when that, whether we call it a policy or a directive, was implemented, was that well received by district staff?
No.
Were employees upset about it?
Yeah.
However, has implementing that directive helped the district to reconcile its budget or to improve the budget deficit?
Yeah, I mean, and there's no issues with it now. I mean, it's been in place for a while.
You had testified, well, for one, going back to this February 17, 2021 letter, I believe you testified prior to this case, you were not aware of that letter having been submitted to Mr. Nowak or Dr. Stelson. Is that correct?
No.
Is it fair to say all you were aware of at that time was Dr. Stelson asked you to meet with Billy Joe to address her overtime?
Correct.
I believe you had stated that you didn't even know what a DWD complaint was.
No, I've never been involved in one before.
Prior to starting in Germantown School District, what was your experience as a director of business for any other school districts?
What was my experience?
Just how many had you worked as a business director in other school districts?
Yeah, I worked in 2 other school districts prior to that for 15 years.
For 15 years. And during that 15 years prior to starting at Germantown, had you ever been involved in a DWD complaint involving wages or overtime?
No.
Okay. And again, you never had any discussion with Mr. Erickson whatsoever which gave you any reason to believe that he had any intent to file a wage or overtime complaint. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay. And at the time when you and Dr. Stousland and Mr. Nowak were discussing a potential change in Mr. Erickson's role at the district, was his February 17th, 2021 letter ever brought up?
No.
Was there ever any discussion that Mr. Erickson intended to file a wage complaint, or was there any concern that he might?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Those are my only questions.
I will be brief. So what other two districts did you work for?
West Bend School District and Watertown School District.
I didn't believe me either when I said that, so I appreciate that smile. That was my joke about being brief. So, I'm sorry, my jokes about making jokes failed as well. I will start over and I apologize. So, my question to you then is, during your time at either of those districts, is it your testimony that no DWD complaints were filed against those school districts?
I don't know that. I wasn't involved in any of them.
Okay, so if we go and check, there won't be any complaints, do you think, or you just won't? What was your position before at those other two school districts?
Same position.
Okay. And
Different
were you
different titles, I'm assuming. But same
were you
position.
involved in implementing any HR overtime policies at those districts?
No, HR does that.
Well, and I guess I need to be clear. I understand you participated in the decision, but did you participate in directing the employees on the new overtime directive?
At my other position, at my other job?
At Germantown?
Yeah, I told my staff when the email came, yes.
Okay. And you said that there are no issues anymore because with the overtime policy, because it's been in place for a while, right?
Correct. People understand that they have to get prior approval. Mhm.
Sure. And they also understand that if anybody makes a complaint about it, like Mr. Erickson, they'll be pushed out, right?
No, I don't think they understand that.
Oh, okay. You started in July of 2020 and you paid out the comp time balance in June of 2021, right? For Miss Mon, right?
June of 20, or July of 2020.
You started in July of 2020, but you
Correct.
didn't pay out the overtime for Miss Mon until June of 2021, right?
Oh, I guess it depends which amount you're talking about, because I started in July of 2020, and within my first week, they gave me the comp time report, and they said, Rick usually signs this because we pay it out on July 15th, whatever it was. So we get paid every 2 weeks. We get paid on the 15th of the month and the 30th of the month.
Great.
So
So sometime in July of 2020, you were aware of the comp time balance of Miss Mon, right?
for the previous fiscal year, yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
what action did you take between 2020 and June of 21 when you paid out the comp time, and when you were directed to do so, to change that comp time balance, if at all?
Okay, I'm sorry. I think we're talking about two different things, but correct me if I'm wrong. In July of 2020, payroll on July 15th of 2020 paid out the previous year's comp time. So that was paid out on July 15th of 2020,
Okay.
her comp time for the previous year.
And that's the
year
one
that-
we're talking, excuse me, is that the one that you thought was very large?
Yes,
Okay. And how much was paid out in the next year?
the following year, I don't know.
Okay. So you only, when you're talking about the comp time balance, you only are talking about the time under Mr. Rick Erickson's supervision. The time under your supervision, you have no knowledge or understanding of. Is that right?
Well, I'm assuming that they paid it out, yes. I mean, I.
Well, you know they paid it out because you were directed to pay it out by the superintendent.
Well, no. Are you talking about the one in February?
Yes,
One in-
ma'am.
Okay, I thought you said June. So the
Well,
one in February,
And I'm
Okay.
sorry I'm interrupting you, but just so we're all on the same page, because I know we've been through this several times. Now I understand in June or July of 2020 that the district paid out Miss Mon's comp time balance, which you thought was large, that had been accrued under Mr. Rick Erickson, correct?
correct, and other people, it was just smaller amounts. Yes, you are correct.
Okay. But then throughout that time of July 2020 until February of 2021, while under your supervision, because you reviewed her timesheets every Tuesday, Miss Mon continued to accrue comp time or overtime, right?
She must have, yes.
Okay. And you don't know what the amount of that balance was when it was under your supervision. You just know the amount that was when it was under other people's supervision, correct?
Through the February one,
That's right.
I don't know the exact amount. It's around a couple $100. I don't know. It wasn't a large amount of money. I mean, she created the list and it was paid off of the list. I mean, I then gave the list to payroll. I didn't calculate anything, so I don't know the dollar amount. I mean, I gave the list to payroll and said that they had to pay this out.
But it's your testimony, it's a couple of $100 or a couple of 100 hours.
I believe it was a small amount
Okay,
of dollars.
I understand. And now
Okay.
finally, you testified that there was a budget deficit and that you were put in charge of reducing the budget deficit. Did I understand that right?
Well, my job is to manage the budget, yes.
Okay, and so during that activity, did you ever take into account Wisconsin or the federal wage and hour laws?
When I was balancing my budget,
That's correct.
no,
Okay, did you ever take into account any anti-retaliatory provision from the state of Wisconsin?
no.
Okay, how about any anti-retaliatory policy or procedure as dictated by the school board?
No,
Okay, so the only thing you took into account was the financial imperative, is that fair?
that's my job, yes.
Okay. I think we are done with questions for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any recross, Attorney Pollack?
No, Judge.
All right.
So Judge, if I may, I do realize that I went a little over here in my original computations. And the reason for that was we were sort of expecting to examine R12. And I understand that the superintendent is now the author of R12. So we would like to examine him. I don't know what the respondent's plan is for putting him on. I'm fine with cross-examining him about it, but we need to know what is going on with R12. So that's where I'm at. I'm happy to close our case in chief with the reservation that we want to examine the superintendent about R12.
We intend to call Dr. Stelson, the superintendent, now.
Great, then I think we're all on the same page. So, and with that in mind, Judge, I think it's fine to close our case in chief here with that understanding, and we're ready to continue.
All right. Do we need any break at this point? I believe we had a short one, but do we need a break to set up the witness?
I think he's just about ready. I mean, I can just text him to log in, so I'm okay just proceeding.
Okay, that's Attorney Hitchcock-Cross. Any thought?
I'll just get some water, but I'm sure by the time he's on, I'll be here.
Sure.
Okay, let's not go off the record. Okay.
All right.
we have the idea. Are we ready? Or are we still waiting for the witness?
We're still
I believe
waiting for the witness, but one thing we can address, actually, he's here, so we'll take it up after the witness.
Thank you. Judge, if we can, I would move to admit Exhibit R15.
That's what I was going to address.
No objections.
All right, then that is admitted.
Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it up.
Thank you for bringing it up. Are we all set?
I believe so. Mr. Stousland, am I pronouncing that correctly? You're on mute.
Is that better?
It is. I can
Yes.
hear you now. And am I is it Stousland?
Yeah, good job.
All right. I've heard it quite a bit. So my name is Joe Surge. I'm the administrative law judge that's hearing this case. You've been called as a witness by Attorney Pollard. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to swear you in, and then I'll ask you just a couple basic questions. And then I will turn you over to Attorney Pollard.
All right.
Can you please raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You can put your hand down. Please state your name and spell it for the record.
Brett Stousland, B-R-E-T-T, and Stousland's S-T-O-U-S-L-A-N-D.
Thank you. And is there anybody else in the room with you?
Nope.
All right. Do you have anything in front of you related to this case?
I do.
All right. Can you do me a favor? Whatever documents it is can you turn them over so that you can't see them? And the reason is
Sure.
I need your firsthand testimony. You may be asked to look at documents. We have the ability to share them on the screen.
Gotcha.
But I'm just going to ask that you don't look at anything until you're prompted to by one of the attorneys.
All right.
All right. With that, Attorney Pollard, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Stousland. Just for the record, where are you currently employed?
Gibraltar School District in Fish Creek, Wisconsin.
And how long have you been working there?
2 years.
And that's, are you currently the superintendent in Gibraltar?
Yep.
I know this is a busy time of year for you, so I appreciate your time today, and we'll try to make this as brief as we can. You were previously employed by the Germantown School District, correct?
Correct.
And what was the time period that you were employed there?
July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2022.
And in what position did you serve?
Superintendent.
Prior to your work as superintendent in Germantown, did you ever serve as a superintendent in any other school districts?
Yep. Barneveld.
And how long were you employed in Barneveld?
5 years.
Okay, thanks. What is your highest level of education?
Doctorate.
I know it has been some time since you were working in Germantown, but we're here today in regard to a claim filed by Donald Erickson against the district. Mr. Erickson is alleging that the district moved him or intended to move him into a different maintenance position as retaliation for the fact that the district believed that he was going to file a wage or overtime complaint with the DWD. Do you recall working with Mr. Erickson?
I do.
What was Mr. Erickson's role or position at the district during your tenure?
Yeah, he was head of maintenance.
Okay. When you first started at Germantown School District in 2020, what were your observations, if any, regarding the maintenance and grounds department?
Well, I mean, initially when we started, it was the height of COVID. So all of our attentions were focused on getting school started. And so for the first 2 months, et cetera, the interaction was, do we have enough hand sanitizer and shields in front of places? You know, that was kind of the main focus. So that was initial. And then as the time went on, that was the initial appearance. I don't know if you want me to go on.
No, I guess, let's start the first 6 months of your tenure from July 2020 to the end of 2020 that year. Were there any issues or concerns that you identified in the maintenance or grounds department?
Yeah, I mean, what was coming in from other employees were really comments about he either yells at us for things, or a quick answer to things where we don't have money for that, or we can't do that. But it was nothing formal at that point. It was more people just casually mentioning it.
True. And when you said he was yelling, you're referring to Mr. Erickson.
Yep.
Okay.
Or he would get.
Sure. Sticking in that time period of the first 6 months in 2020, did you ever have, or do you recall having any discussions with Mr. Erickson regarding any of these types of concerns?
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking with him. It wasn't like a documented conversation, but just saying, "Tell me about." So I heard this. Tell me about it, and he would give his version of it. It wasn't until we started getting more formal complaints from, well, Brittany got most of them from other employees that were written, and I would be on them, some CC'd on them, or it was addressed to me as well. Until it became more formal. Yep.
Sure. Around the time, let me ask you this. Who is Mr. Erickson's direct supervisor?
Brittany.
Okay. That's Brittany Altendorf?
Yep. Right there.
She's right here, yep. And you and Miss Altendorf both started at the district at the same time, right?
We did.
Around the time you started, do you recall the district undergoing any changes in terms of how it managed employee overtime?
Well, I do. One of the things that Brittany was, well, I don't know if she was tasked with it or just quickly recognized, is that financially our district was not in the best place, like by millions of dollars. And kind of going through, we were actually doing a whole budget exercise for the year to figure out, and we asked our principals to be involved, and what are ways that we can help reduce our overall costs. But one of the things that she uncovered was that when I say several, I'm talking, 8, 9, 10 employees had what I would say excessive salaries increases because of overtime that they were just submitting and they weren't being approved. One person in particular was earning about $60,000, but over $90,000 with the extra time that they were, kind of comp time that they were putting in, or overtime. So we looked at that, and as one of many things that we were looking at, and kind of the communication with our principals was, look, all overtime has to be approved. That was the first conversation, and also part of our conversation was there needed to be clarity between what was flex time, what was comp time, and what was overtime. And some people were thinking they were doing flex time by saying, let's say I worked 2 extra hours this week because I want to take off 2 hours next week. And by the rules of flex time, that's not okay. You have to flex it within the same week. So if you want to be gone 2 hours early for a child's softball game on a Tuesday, you've got to make up that time by the end of the week to get your 40 hours. So it was more clarification for our principals and our other administrators in the district office, because we were having a lot of people with overtime that was unapproved.
Is it, I guess, am I understanding correctly that the biggest change that was being implemented was overtime had to be approved? You couldn't just take it without approval.
Correct. That's what I remember.
Were those changes well received by employees?
No, I don't think that, I would say, I think they like the way they're doing it, but even some principals, I remember the high school principal reaching out, kind of saying, hey, how am I going to do this? Because I need my person to work back to school night, or some, events that would happen after hours. And but it was just more, you can have overtime. It just has to be approved by you. But prior to that, a lot of the employees were just working without prior approval. So it was really clarification for, like I said, for administrators in our district office, as well as our principals at the sites.
Okay. Do you recall receiving a letter from Mr. Erickson dated February 17, 2021?
I do.
I'll put that up on the screen in a second, but I'm just curious, prior to receiving that letter, had you ever had any conversation with Mr. Erickson regarding any wage or overtime issue?
No, he was salaried, by the way.
Okay. Meaning
He
was
wasn't
not
in
eligible.
an hourly position. So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm going to pull up. Pulling up my screen and a document which has been marked as Exhibit R11. Now, this exhibit is a copy of the letter dated February 17, 2021, which has previously been admitted in this case, except this is a different version of the letter with some notes on it. Do you recognize this letter?
Oh yeah, that's my signature and handwriting.
And that's your notes on the bottom of the page?
Yep.
Do you recall when you received this letter?
I mean, I have to go off of the date that
Sure.
it was either that date, the 17th, or the 18th, because I know the meeting notes on the bottom said the 19th. So, because I had met with Don, so this came in and it was very confusing at first because, like I said, he's a salaried employee, but taking a minute to think about it, it was, so my secretary was his wife. And not at this point, but eventually she became my secretary. She was Brittany was a supervisor in 20 through 2021, and then she became my secretary. So, and we were assuming that he was writing this for his wife. Remember that being the conversation.
And then his wife is Billy Joe, is that correct?
Correct.
So after receiving this letter, I guess, do you recall how you received this letter? Was it given to you in person?
No, Mike Nowak gave me the copy.
Okay. And then did you have any discussion with Mr. Erickson regarding this letter?
No, but one of the things that I don't know the exact words, but I remember saying to Mike, I said, well, we need to meet with Don to find out what he's talking about. Like, what's the illegal practice that he's referring to in here to get more details. And so then I set up a meeting with him. So, but by I remember just being early morning the next day after the letter, where he said, I'm rescinding my letter. And I said, I still want to sit down and talk to you about, because my approach was like, if we're doing something that's wrong, let's fix it. Let's rectify it. And I can't be specific unless I went back and looked at my old calendar, which I can't get to, but I remember a conversation with Brittany saying, well, if there's something we need to do that's to get everybody square in this, let's do it. If it meaning pay people where they needed to be paid, now that we're moving forward with, here's the expectations, but let's make people right first, and then take care of based on our new communication around overtime and flex time.
So,
but we didn't talk. Yeah, but then we never, because he rescinded the letter. That's why I put the note on here, because I thought that's weird that he would hand it in and then rescind it. And then when we met, he said, I'm not moving forward. I don't want this letter to be He said, I want to take it away, but I still wanted to find out what practices were in his mind that weren't right.
And did you then meet with him to discuss what was not right in his mind?
We did, but I remember, I mean, I obviously can't remember everything that was mentioned, but my notes were more about like just helping him or we were explaining flex time, overtime, comp time. I felt that was more of the conversation. Then we actually moved into several other topics not related to this.
Sure, and I think I know what you're referencing. I guess, was it your understanding that his concerns here were in relation to Billy Joe's overtime? I think you said that, right?
Well, he never said that. That was what we inferred, or what I inferred. But I said it was confusing because he's not an hourly employee, so it had to be he was either doing it on behalf of someone, but he never actually said, I'm doing this for my wife.
So did you ask anyone to look into Billy Joe's overtime at that point?
I did. I asked Brittany I asked Brittany to just look at everyone's overtime, including Billy Joe's.
Okay. Gotcha. I guess, do you recall if Brittany did look into it, and to your knowledge, what was the resolution at least in terms of Billy Joe?
Yeah, I mean, Brittany could maybe answer this too, but I'm almost positive that we went through, figured out what she was owed, and we paid her that amount.
Okay.
As well as others. So I don't know if that's what she recalls either.
Gotcha. Pulling up now, exhibit R12. This has been admitted in the case. Do you see this document on your screen?
I do.
Are these your notes?
Yep.
Do you know, are these so is this notes taken at the meeting on February 19, 2021?
It was, and for again, I'm thinking back during the time, but I had some regular meetings set with Don for different things to touch base, and I feel like this date was already set to meet, and that's why to talk about these other items. But because of that letter that came in, we talked about the flex time, comp time first, and then went into the rest of his concerns that we had as he as an employee.
Gotcha.
Attorney Pollard, just to correct the record, you mentioned that R12 had been admitted. It has not been admitted yet. It's still outstanding.
Thank you. We'll get to that along with R11 later. Thank you. Dr. Stelzlin, looking at item number 2, there's a reference to blow-ups. Do you have any recollection of what that was referring to?
I mean, I'm just looking at the stuff that's on there. You know, he had one with me. He had one at the pool person. So this is probably why I set the meeting, because he had a blow up in the business office the previous Friday. And, you know, I can see what I wrote when Don said I'm working on it, and which he means he's working on his anger management. You know, and in a short period of time, there was multiple situations where he blew up at people, and blew up means raising his voice, showing great frustration. Like I said, it's probably why this meeting was scheduled. You know, it wasn't necessarily for the his letter. It just happened to be that was the timing of it.
I see there's a note kind of in the middle of the page on the right regarding communication with a lot of circles around it. Was Mr. Erickson's communication with his co-workers an issue?
Yeah, kind of lack thereof communication, but and that piece next to it to the left, those were his kind of comments on and his self-reflection about where he was in the job. And he had these concerns. He wasn't feeling trusted by his staff. Felt that there was a school board member that was out to get him. That Brittany was listening to another school board member. And there was some, I can't remember. Train was obviously one of our HVAC system. But there was a letter or an email. I don't know if it's in your exhibits or not, but that was related to an issue that Lars, who was a newer maintenance person that was hired, there was an issue there. But communication obviously was one of the big areas. We kind of at some point in Brittany's plan of improvement for him, I think there was 3 big headings, and communication was one of them.
Gotcha. I see item number 5. There's reference to Billy Joe doing your job ? Do you recall, was there any concern or belief that Billy Joe was doing Don's job?
She absolutely was doing a lot of his work. And a lot of the communication that should have probably been coming from him was coming through her. And again, she was in a part of the reason for her, not part of the reason, I mean, a good reason was for her coming to work as the admin secretary for me, was to get her out of that situation, because she had Brittany as the supervisor, but yet she was the maintenance / business manager secretary. So she was acting as his secretary as well in some sense, but really he didn't supervise her, but and again, Brittany and I were new at the same time, but historically, I don't know if she had kind of taken over that role of helping maintenance because she was trying to make things better. I don't know, but
Gotcha.
it wasn't a good situation. A lot of the communication that was related to maintenance came through her.
Got it. So I think, I mean, I appreciate your help with the timeline. So these were your notes from a meeting on February 19, 2021. But am I understanding you that these were issues that you were meeting with Don about that had been identified prior to that date?
Correct.
And prior to the February 17th letter as well?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So after this meeting, do you recall, I mean, did you continue to meet with Mr. Erickson?
Yeah, I mean, I did, but not about the letter. It was just
Sure. I'm going to pull up what has been marked as Exhibit R4, and it appears that these are notes from a meeting on June 4, 2021, heading Don E at the top. Do you recognize these notes?
Yep.
Are these your notes?
They are.
Not to belabor it, but you met with Don at this time, and it looks like there were 3 areas of concern that were addressed: communication, or at least under the headings of communication, managing people, and level of excellence. I mean, is it fair to say that those were categories of concern?
Absolutely.
Okay. So do you recall at some point after this meeting in June of 2021, was Mr. Erickson put on a plan of improvement?
He was. I don't know the exact date, but there was a full typed written plan of improvement.
There's been some inference previously in this case that the district used a plan of improvement as a means of, I guess, getting an employee out of the district, like it was kind of like a death sentence, so to speak. Is that accurate?
Well, I'm speaking of 8 20 years in administration that a plan of improvement for most people is very hard to get out of. But I can think of 3 examples of people who had a plan of improvement and turned it around. So I wouldn't say it's a death sentence. I would say for most people, it's very difficult for them to manage the things that they've over time have shown great weaknesses in.
Okay. So is it fair to say that, well, being put on a plan of improvement, then it was, I guess, an indication of serious performance issues?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now it's the plan of improvement, I understand, was implemented in or around August of 21. Now, sometime later, in or around April of 2022, do you recall a decision being made to change Mr. Erickson's position?
I do.
Do you know, I guess, why that decision was made?
Well, I would say it wasn't because hadn't met the plan of improvement.
Okay. Do you know if any decision had been made at that time as to what Mr. Erickson's salary would be in the new position?
I don't recall. For whatever reason, I feel like there wasn't even going to be a change in his salary, but just by title. But I don't remember.
Okay. Did Mr. Erickson ever take on a new role?
No, he submitted a letter of resignation kind of before there was going to be a transition. I don't know if it was a month or 2 before.
Well, I guess before I get to this next exhibit, so this decision had been made to place Mr. Erickson into a new position. Who all at the district was involved in making that decision?
Well, man, I would say collectively, most of the conversation would have been with Brittany and Mike Nowak, our director of HR, but
Yep.
I was in the loop.
Sure. And at any time around the time that decision was made or prior to that decision being made, do you recall any discussion about concerns of Mr. Erickson filing a wage complaint with the DWD?
None. I mean, that back to the February dates, it was talked about when he handed the letter in and when we rescinded it, and that was the last time we even kind of crossed our minds.
So do you believe that anyone at the district, at least, or did you, Ms. Altendorf or Mr. Nowak, have any reason to believe that Mr. Erickson might be filing a wage complaint?
Yeah, I definitely didn't, or even thought about it. I can't speak for Brittany or Mike.
That's fair. I've pulled up a document marked as Exhibit 9. This is a letter addressed from Donald Erickson to you as district administrator, dated April 27, 2022. Do you recall receiving this letter?
I do.
And was this Mr. Erickson's notice of retirement?
Yes.
He states in this letter in the 3rd paragraph, "I'm disappointed by the outcome of events, but understand Germantown School District is looking to reform its maintenance department." I just want to ask you, is that true that the district was looking to reform its maintenance department?
Yeah, I mean, as far as, I don't know what you mean by reform, but we wanted to get it moving in a different direction.
Gotcha. Dr. Stolzen.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't know if this is side commentary or not, but I would add part of, I don't think anyone, I mean, Don's hardworking guy and spent a lot of time in the district, just wasn't the right role. And I think that was part of the reason of saying, okay, maintenance director may not be the right position, but he'd still be valuable to our district as a maintenance person.
Because it sounds like
director, so
yeah, it sounds like the the concerns were primarily with his leadership abilities. Is that fair to say?
Fair to say.
Okay. Dr. Stelzman, I really appreciate your time. I don't have any further questions at this time. Mr. Erickson's attorney will now have an opportunity to ask you some questions.
Thank you. Judge, I'm ready if you are.
Go ahead.
All right. So, Mr. Stausman, when did you leave Germantown?
Well, as fast as I could, but it was June of 22.
Okay. And so by my calculations, it's about a month after Mr. Erickson left. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Why did you leave Germantown?
I took a new job.
Okay.
Yep.
And I understand Germantown has like almost 4,000 students. Is that about right?
Correct.
And Door County, where you're at now, has about 470. Is that about right?
No,
580.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. That's a qualitative difference, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Okay. Was it your choice to leave Germantown?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Are you paid the same as you were before?
I'm paid more.
All right.
That's what I said. All right.
All right. I mean, Fish Creek isn't bad. Now, if we can focus then on February, I believe it's 17th of 2021. Mr.
Yep.
Erickson came into your office and handed you a letter. Is that right?
I don't remember it like that. I remember Mike bringing the letter over to me, the copy. But I remember the day after seeing it, Don popping into my office first thing in the morning saying he wanted to rescind the letter.
Okay. I appreciate that. If we can just stick to my questions though. And are we clear if it was in your office or we're not clear?
Well, what was the question?
Did you receive this letter in your office or somewhere else?
Yes, my office.
Okay. Did you put these notes on the letter that we have here? And
I
then just
did.
excuse me. And for the record here, that's Exhibit R11. I see on the top of that letter that there, and I will share my screen with you to be fair. Do you see that R11 there, sir?
Yep.
Okay. And then I believe it says still on the top of that document. Is that accurate?
No, that's my signature.
That's to mean that that's you?
That's my last name. Yep. That's how I
I
signed
understand.
stuff.
Okay. And just so I understand then, as the superintendent, is your job to enforce the policy on behalf of the board?
All policies. Yep.
All the policies. Okay. So for example, it's your job to enforce board policy 1000, right?
Sure.
What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah. I said all policies.
Okay. And so do you know what board policy 1000 was?
Well, when I just saw it. Yeah.
Okay.
The
What is
whistleblower
it?
one, you mean?
Oh, okay. And what do you know about the whistleblower policy?
I know I don't have it memorized.
Okay.
I know there's probably no means retaliation.
As superintendent, do you believe that board policy 1000 placed any duties upon you?
I'd have to look at 1000 to determine that.
Okay. And why is that? Because you were charged with enforcing all the policies. Why do you need to look at it now?
You know how many policies there are in a school district?
Yes, I do. Many of them not drafted by WASB. Now, can you answer my question?
Well, I think you're asking me do I have it memorized? And the answer is no.
And we went beyond that if you had it memorized if you understood what it required, if it didn't put any duties on you. And sitting here today, you're not able to tell us. That's what I'm trying to find out.
Yeah, if that's how you want to interpret it, sure.
How did you prepare for your testimony here today?
How did I prepare?
That's right.
I didn't really. I talked to Kevin, who explained
Okay.
the situation.
Anything else?
No. I mean, I don't know what, I guess, what do you mean? I didn't look up policies. I didn't do anything like that. No.
No. Did you talk with Ms. Altendorf at all?
I did not.
When was the last time you talked to Ms. Altendorf?
A year ago, maybe.
Okay. When was the last time you talked to Ms. Altendorf about Mr. Erickson?
I mean, since I left, never.
Okay. So, can you explain to us why, on your notes from February 19th, that the first bullet point says plan of improvement?
Because that's what we were meeting about. As I,
Oh, okay.
yeah, as I said before, the letter of the whistleblower kind of came, the meeting was already scheduled. That came in between when it was scheduled to when the actual meeting happened.
Do you have any documents to show that the district had any issues with Mr. Erickson's conduct prior to February 17th of 2021?
I'd have to have all the emails pulled or something. I
Sure.
wouldn't have access to those anymore.
Well, when I asked you if you, how you prepared for this hearing, you knew that we were having a hearing here today, right?
I did, yep.
Okay. And did you discuss any documents with anybody?
Kevin,
You're on mute, Attorney Hitchcock Cross.
I know, thank you. Okay. So, and then let's focus in on, again, the 17th, and I'm not quite sure when this happened, but as I understand it, Mr. Erickson gave you and Mr. Novak his letter, and then after that, you had a conversation with Brittany Altendorf. Is that fair?
fair.
Okay. And during that conversation, from what I understood of your testimony, it sounds like you did more than explain to Miss Altendorf that she should pay out Miss Mon's comp time. Is that fair?
Yeah, everyone's that if everyone that had it coming should have been paid out.
Okay. And about how many people do you believe had overtime coming to them during that meeting?
I'm purely guessing, but I would say 5.
Okay. And what job duties did those people hold?
Mainly secretaries.
Do you feel that it was proper for the Germantown School District to try to balance its budgets on the back of the secretaries?
Object to the form of the question.
Hey, I would say
Well,
this.
hold on. Attorney Hitchcock, can you rephrase the question? Excuse me, Hitchcock Cross, can you please rephrase the question?
Sure. You don't dispute then that there was at least 5 employees who were not receiving the proper overtime on at least February 17th of 2021, right?
Yeah, as I said, that was a guess. Yeah.
Okay. And you don't also dispute that there was a budget deficit, right?
There was. Yep.
Okay. And was there any communication between the board and you to limit overtime?
Not from the board. No.
Okay. Was there any communication from individual board members to you to limit overtime?
No. We were looking at this all on our own, and we looked at everything across the board.
And when you say we were looking at this all on our own, who are you talking about?
The district office administrators and building principals.
Okay. And when you were having these discussions, did you ever discuss the fair state or federal wage and hour law?
No.
No. Okay. Now, after you discovered that you were violating state and federal wage and hour law with regard to at least 5 secretaries, what steps other than directing Ms. Altendorf to correct the pay out those employees did you take to fix that problem?
Object to the question as testifying as to a legal conclusion. But I don't think Mr. Hitchcock Cross is testifying today about.
Sure, and I can easily cure that right there. Sir, you don't
Please do.
dispute, I mean, did you pay out these employees their overtime because you think you didn't, the district did not owe them overtime?
No, because that was the time we were also making everything right, and we wanted to make sure that people got paid for the time that they worked that was under comp time or time and a half, and we wanted to make sure that they got paid that, and then we were moving forward with all our new practices.
Great, did you consult anybody at that time regarding the law?
I don't think so.
So how do you know that you solved the problem after you directed Ms. Altendorf to pay out at least 5 people?
Well, if the problem was on our end, which we have the right to do, to say you have to have your overtime pre-approved, that's all we did. We didn't say there was going to be no overtime. We just said it had to be pre-approved.
Sure. That was going forward, right?
Correct.
Okay, but you also are clear, and I guess let me put this another way. Do you understand that Ms. Altendorf, or that employees, including Ms. Mon, were changing their time records under the direction of Ms. Altendorf?
I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, okay. And are you aware that, do you know who Ms. Parmenter is?
Yeah.
Okay. And are you aware that she testified yesterday under oath that Ms. Altendorf directed her to change employees' time records and that she did so?
I am not. Nope.
Okay. So before today, right now is the first time that you're hearing that Ms. Altendorf directed people, your employees, to change their time records. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And are you aware of whether or not Ms. Altendorf was required to review certain employees' timesheets?
Well, I know. I mean, I'm assuming she did. She's the business manager.
Okay. Did you feel that she reviewed Ms. Mon? Well, you're her supervisor, right?
Yep.
Okay. So while you were a supervisor, were you aware of whether or not Ms. Altendorf was reviewing Ms. Mon's timesheets at any time?
Well, I'm assuming she was looking at a lot of people's timesheets.
Okay.
And because she supervised Billy Joe, absolutely, she was looking at it.
Okay. And are you aware of that before February of 2021, there are notes and notes and notes in Ms. Mon's timesheets saying that she's altered them per BA, otherwise Brittany Altendorf. Are you aware of that?
Nope.
No. Okay. And these are the timesheets that your supervisee supervised, right?
Sure.
Okay. And I just want to be clear, because you're telling the public here and the whole state of Wisconsin, possibly the world, certainly under oath, that you had no idea that district employees were changing their timesheets while you're the superintendent. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, other than directing Ms. Altendorf to pay out these 5 employees, did you take any other steps to investigate what Mr. Erickson put in his letter?
Well, I wanted to meet with him about it, and
Okay.
he said, and so because there was a complaint, and regardless if he rescinded it or not, I wanted to find out what the complaint was so we could work with it. If there's something we were doing wrong, we wanted to make sure we weren't.
Well, okay, so other than tell Ms. Altendorf to pay out the time that you recognize that you should have paid out, what other steps did you take, if any?
That was it.
Okay, and we confirmed you didn't consult an attorney, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, did you tell the board at any time?
I can't answer. I don't know if I did or not.
Oh, okay. And do you feel that under any policy or procedure governing your conduct at Germantown that you had an obligation to tell the board about Mr. Erickson's complaint?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that what the policy says?
So I'm sorry, to be clear, your answer is you don't know. Is that fair?
Yeah, yep.
Okay. And again, you're the person who should know, right? To be fair to you, to ask that a different way, there's nobody else in the district, oh, let me put it that way. In the Germantown School District, while you were the superintendent, did the buck stop with you or somebody else?
No, I was the superintendent, right?
Okay. Okay. I'm going to share this document. Do you see this here?
Yep.
Judge, this is page 159 of our exhibits.
Thank you.
Sir, do you recognize this document?
I recognize the heading and the policy number.
Okay. And do you believe this policy was in effect while you were the superintendent of the Germantown School District?
Yep.
While the buck stopped with you, right?
Yep.
Okay. Now, and while you were the buck stopped with you, you were also an administrator, right?
Well, that's the title. Yeah.
Okay, and an employee?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just read this for you and you can tell me if I misread anything. It is the responsibility of an administrator who is aware of conduct on the part of any board member or the employee that possibly violates federal or state law or board policy to call this conduct to the attention of his or her immediate supervisor. Do you see that there?
Yep.
Okay, so you don't dispute that you were made aware of behavior that possibly violates federal state law, right?
Well, I would say this, I didn't have the details of it because Mr. Erickson never said the details of what the issue was. He rescinded it. And then when we talked about it, didn't have details.
Right, but
I don't know what the conduct was.
Sure, and we already covered that you took no steps other than in telling Ms. Altendorf to pay out the overtime. You took no steps to investigate the gravamen in his complaint, right?
But there wasn't details to his complaint, so there was nothing to dig into based on what he was saying.
Oh, okay. So for example, when Mr. Erick said per chapter DWD 274 of the Department of Workforce Development, any employees covered by this must receive overtime pay for all hours worked beyond a 40-hour week. Can you explain to me what you didn't understand about that sentence?
I mean, I understood the sentence.
Okay, so what questions did you have about that sentence?
I was more because I wanted to know what he was referring to in particular and why he rescinded the letter. There was no remarks to that.
Well, okay, sir. So then I'll point you back to R12 and the document that you wrote. So you're saying there's no remarks. Is that right?
Yeah, to the details of what the complaint was.
Okay, so you drew a doodle here. Do you see that doodle?
There's a black.
Sure, top right-hand corner. I agree. There's several doodles.
Yeah.
It says flex time, comp time. There's an underline, there's an arrow, there's two dots, several triangles, and then 1 1/2. Do you see that there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember talking about how we were correctly defining flex time, comp time, overtime.
Right. So not only did you discuss this issue with Mr. Erickson, but in fact, you drew a diagram to show that you understood it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So do you want to change your previous testimony or something else?
I'm not sure what my previous testimony was. I'm saying I talked about and was explaining what we were doing with comp time and flex time.
Sure. You testified under oath, sir, that you didn't have enough information from Mr. Erickson's letter to ask any further questions, and it left you nothing with questions, but you took up no time to ask or him or anybody else. You testified to that under oath, didn't you?
If you say I did.
Okay. And then we just showed you your doodle. And do you think this doodle reflects something other than your understanding of Mr. Erickson's concerns?
No, it to me, it shows that I talked about those two things with him, but not based on anything he said. I was just explaining it, comp time and flex time.
Right. And I'm suggesting to you that that's in direct conflict with your prior testimony in which you claim that you didn't understand the gravamen of Mr. Erickson's DWD complaint. Right?
Objection. This is very argumentative. We've asked the same series of questions over and over.
It is cross, so I understand it's argumentative, but I do think we're starting to go around in circles a little bit.
All right. Well, Hitchcock cross anyway, but I got it. So trademarked, you see. Okay. Well, then I think we'll go on from this point here because, sir, again, let's be clear. You're saying that you both didn't understand the gravamen of Mr. Erickson's complaint, correct?
Yep.
Okay. And you also saying that you didn't conduct any investigation into his complaints, right?
Other than talking to him, yeah.
Okay. And then you're also clear that you wrote this doodle, which was in reaction to your conversation with him about his complaint, right?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Now, taking you back to this document here, I look on number 1 on this document here. I see plan of improvement. Do you see that there?
I can't see the document, but I saw it before.
Okay. And plan of improvement, that meant PIP to you, right? That's synonymous?
Yep.
Okay. So it's fair to say that, and as I understand it, Miss Altendorf just testified that she didn't do a review of Mr. Erickson until, I believe, June of 2021. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
Okay, so as I understand it, Mr. Erickson, it was already destined for him to be on a plan of improvement about 48 hours after handing this letter to you, right?
That was in motion before I said before was.
Okay, but
the meeting was scheduled already with those other items, and this letter kind of came in between all of that. So the meeting wasn't about the letter, and the plan of improvement, the talking points of that were already there prior to ever seeing a letter or even having it rescinded.
Did you ever send an email to Don prior to 2/19 of 2021 saying, hey, I'd like to meet with you about a plan of improvement?
You'd have to pull my emails from the district. I can't
Sure.
say I did.
And you
or didn't
prepared
without
today
seeing
for
it.
this hearing with the district's attorney, right?
Objection.
No,
You
there was
can't
no
be asking
prepare.
what communications were between the witness and counsel.
If you have an email.
Hold on, Mr. Southland.
Yeah.
Hold on. I'm going to sustain the objection. Please avoid asking about what the preparation was between Mr. Stousland and Attorney Pollard.
Sure, and I understand that, and just so we're clear and going forward, I'm not trying to ask him about what his conversations were or anything else. We're just trying to be clear when he says, hey, I don't have this X, Y, or Z document, that he had the opportunity to prepare X, Y, or Z document and simply failed to do so.
Well,
so
I don't think it's, hold on. So we're getting into some issues here with discovery, and both parties had the opportunity to engage in discovery. I don't expect a lay witness to appear here with exhibits that weren't provided. I mean, the exhibits are what they are. There's no exhibit predating February 19th to elucidate any of this. And of course, he didn't bring any with him because he wouldn't be expected to.
Okay. Well, no, he would be expected to, Judge. He would be expected to bring documents to the hearing to support the contention that he's making. And he would be expected to do that after he's had an opportunity to consult with the district's attorney. So he would be, today's the day for the hearing, today's the day to bring documents. So if you don't have the documents, then we can assume that they don't exist.
The parties would be expected to do that. A singular witness wouldn't be expected to do that.
Sure.
Or the complainant would be expected to have found those documents.
I also agree with that. That's why I mentioned both parties had the opportunity to engage in discovery.
Let's put it like this. I just understand what you're saying. I disagree. To save us all the time, I'll move on.
Well, and I think you've made your point that he doesn't have the documents that you're asking about. We just seem to be covering it over and over.
I got
I
it.
would,
And
I would ask, does Don have an email I sent him?
And so I'm going to ask you, Mr. Sousan, just to not pose the questions to the attorneys as the witness. And the reason I say that is because there's been a lot of legwork that went into this prior to
Yeah,
prepping in
that's
terms
fine.
of turning over exhibits. So I understand there may be something out there, but it's not part of the hearing and it won't be part of the
Yeah.
record. I appreciate the suggestion, but the exhibits are what they are at this point. Go ahead, Attorney Hitchcock-Cross.
thank you. Okay. While you were the superintendent, has anybody ever filed a DWD complaint against the district?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And how about while you're at Door County? Have you ever been aware of anybody filing a DWD?
Nope.
Okay. So you've got this letter from Mr. Erickson. That's correct. And that letter said it's against the DWD regulations. Is that right?
That's what the letter says.
Okay. Now, at any time, did you ask Mr. Erickson to sign a document saying that he would not file a DWD complaint against the district?
No,
No. Did he release all of his claims at any time in writing?
not in writing, just verbally.
Okay. Well, he didn't release his claims then, did he?
Objection, argumentative, asking for a legal conclusion.
I'll ask you this way. What did he tell you? Why did he tell you the reason was that he wasn't pursuing that formal complaint at that time?
He did not give me a why. He just said, I want to rescind my letter.
He gave you no reason whatsoever?
No.
Okay. While you were at the district, did you ever receive any complaints against Ms. Altendorf?
Sure.
Okay, what was the nature of those complaints?
That we were cutting things and budgets were being reduced. And I would say those came from some principals who were worried that their budgets were being cut.
How about yelling? Did anybody ever complain about Ms. Altendorf yelling at them?
I don't know, honestly. I mean, that's so long ago for me. I certainly would never receive anything in writing, because we would have talked about it.
And you know who Miss Melissa?
Possible.
I'm sorry if I was cutting you off. Do you know who Melissa Parmenter is?
Yes.
Okay. And did she do an exit interview at any time?
Not with me. Well, with Mike. Maybe with Mike and I. Yes, she probably did.
Okay. And would you accept that she echoed her testimony in there that Miss testimony from yesterday that Miss Altendorf was yelling at her?
I mean, I didn't see the testimony yesterday, but if that's what she says, you have.
And how about swearing? Did you have any complaints that Miss Altendorf was swearing at your district employees?
I can't confirm. I don't know. If that's what someone else said in testimony, then that's it.
Okay. And based on, did you ever put Miss Altendorf on a performance improvement plan based on any of those comments that you heard?
Nope.
No. Okay. Why not?
Because I'm not sure those comments. I mean, you're saying they were said by Mrs. Parmenter, which
Mhm.
is true to her, but yeah, well, the answer is no, not a plan.
Okay. And are you aware of any other district employees leaving the district because of Miss Altendorf?
Well, I know we had turnover in our business office. I can't tell you that was the sole reason. One person left after 2 weeks to take a
Okay.
different job, but we had turnover.
Okay, in Miss Altendorf's department, right?
Yes,
Did you conclude that she had a problem with communications at any time?
I did not.
Oh, okay. And so did you support her? Is that fair?
Well, as I would support all the people in the district office. I would say no
Okay.
different than I would support everyone else.
And you're saying you've never observed Miss Altendorf yelling at anybody at the district personally?
No, she never not no. I don't even know if she yelled at me. She might have, but
Okay.
I don't remember.
Now, and when you learned that Miss Altendorf hadn't had people under her supervision that weren't being paid overtime, that the district had to then pay them overtime out to, did you put her on a performance improvement plan then?
No, because we were still sorting all of this out. It wasn't just like one day we figured this out. It was lots of conversations leading up to what we need to do with that area of comp time, overtime, flex time.
Well, if Miss Altendorf said that the only instruction you gave her was to pay out Miss Mon, is that true statement or a false statement?
That's a true statement. Yeah, we wanted to make it right.
Okay, but did you give her any other instructions besides that?
I don't I mean, as far as what, like, I didn't give
Well,
her
you
any
told her
additional
first,
things to
for
do.
example, to pay out 4 other employees, right?
Well, I'm guessing that. I'm saying we want to make anyone who we need to make right.
And you had that discussion with Miss Altendorf, right?
Ultimately, correct.
Okay. And do you believe Miss Altendorf was not aware of that the overtime policy, that there was people not getting paid overtime?
Well, I guess you would have to answer that.
Well, you're her supervisor, right?
Sure.
So based on your supervision of her, did you believe that she was aware of the overtime violations before they occurred?
I know for sure we were aware of lots of overtime. And I don't know when you say violation, I'm not sure exactly what the violation piece you're referring to.
When you directed Miss Altendorf to pay Miss Mon, for example, did you do that because you thought the district owed her nothing or for some other reason?
No, because if that person worked those hours, we wanted to pay them.
Okay, and you were aware at that time that there at least 2 weeks had gone by at the end of the close of any pay period and that she hadn't been paid her overtime for, right?
Correct.
Okay, because you knew that had been going on for the entire school year, right?
No, I didn't.
Oh, how long did you know that had been going on for?
I can't put a time on it, but because what was, and I could be a little off on this, but I think Billy Joe was keeping a side list of time that she worked over that wasn't going into the our Skyward system, but I could be wrong on that. But we wanted to make sure we paid that time. That was the point of it.
Okay, and when did you first become aware that Billy Joe was keeping a separate time list?
Right about that time, right there.
Okay, did you ask anybody why she was keeping a separate time list?
Nope.
Why not?
I don't know. I just didn't.
Okay, as superintendent, who else's job was that?
I would say her supervisor.
Okay, and that would have been Miss Altendorf, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
did you ever ask Miss Altendorf about that? Why she was keeping a separate list?
No.
No. And you never put Ms. Altendorf on a plan, a PIP, because you learned her, did you, let's put it like this. Do you think there was a communications issue because one of Mrs. Altendorf's subordinates was keeping a separate overtime list?
I'm going to object to this line of questioning. This case is not about Ms. Altendorf's job performance.
That's what you call relevance.
You're on mute, Judge.
How is whether she was put on a PIP relevant in this case?
Really good question, Judge. So if there's one standard for people who tell them that they're going to do file an ERD complaint, and another standard for people who don't, and people who violate the overtime law, that's pretty relevant. So that's why we're talking about this. If there's one set of consequences for people who report the problem, and there's another set of consequences, meaning no consequences for the perpetrators, that's about as relevant as it gets.
Well, that would be, it's a similarly situated individual, and Miss Altendorf was Mr. Erickson's supervisor. She's not similarly situated, and it's a different factual situation, different job. So I don't think it's relevant.
Sir, the issue here is whether or not they're following their policies or not.
That's not the issue in this case. The issue in this case is whether essentially whether they demoted Mr. Erickson out of concern or out of the belief that he was going to be filing or would participate in a wage claim or an overtime claim.
Sure, and if they're
so it's not whether they were following
there, it makes it more or less likely that that's the case.
But we're not going to get into. I'm not going to get into a trial within a trial of Miss Altendorf's performance. We don't have performance reviews. We don't have anything along those lines. The statements about what occurred really are hearsay in many instances, and I don't think it's relevant. So I'm going to ask you to move on to a different topic.
I got it. Okay, thank you. So, sir, as I understood your testimony, you're saying there was some back and forth with you and Miss Altendorf about getting this issue resolved, specifically with Miss Mon. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. Was Mr. Novak involved in those discussions?
I'm sure he was at some point. I don't know to what level.
Okay. Can you explain how the district kept track of flex time?
It would have been by each supervisor. So if I'm the high school principal, right, and my secretary wants to leave 2 hours early for a kid's concert, so the supervisors were in charge of the flex time because they had to be during that week. And that was part of all of it anyway.
Was there any issues with overtime with the principals?
At the high school, we had some issues until we had it clarified.
Okay, and by issues, what I mean was at the high schools where people incurring overtime, but the district wasn't paying overtime.
No, we paid people's overtime. That was
okay.
It. And nobody else was doing side notes that we didn't know about.
So the 5 employees that you've identified, or possibly 6, we've got Billy Joe Moan, right? What other? She's an administrative assistant, as I understand. Were the rest of them administrative assistants?
The ones I remember were secretaries.
Okay, who were supervising those secretaries?
Well, like I said, the high school principal was one of them, who supervised some until we got it to squared away. And some of our elementary principals, I can't remember which ones. I just remember that we had this period where we were really clarifying what it meant, who was approving, etc.
Okay, how about Mr. Nowak's secretary? Was she working overtime but not getting paid for it?
Well, you'd have to ask her or ask Mike, but because he supervised her.
Sure, but you said you directed these people to pay out 6 employees. So is that one of those 6 employees?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm guessing at the other ones because I'm assuming we had some people that needed to get paid for that, for their time. If they were working and weren't submitting the time, we wouldn't see it on the forms.
Okay. And you admit that in the end, that there was time that needed to be paid out. And are we clear that that was against federal law or something else?
Objection, asking for a legal conclusion.
I'm going to sustain the objection. You are asking him to make a determination about that would lead to a legal conclusion.
Fair enough. And I can do you one better then. Do you believe that based on Mr. Erickson's letter that you're now reading and understanding of policy 1000, that you were required to inform the board that you were, that at least 5 or 6 people had not been paid overtime, and you were correcting that now?
No, we were paying Billy Joel's time that she'd written down on the side. That's what was being paid.
Okay.
But your question was, did I tell the board? No.
Okay. And do you believe that the district pays overtime because it wants to, or for some other reason?
No, we pay it because it's the law.
Okay. I have no more questions.
Attorney Pollard?
No more questions, Dr. Stolson. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stousel. I apologize for not referencing your title.
Oh, that's fine. I can't give you a prescription med, so.
Let us know next time you're back in Germantown. Oh, all right.
All right, Attorney Pollard, did you want to call another witness?
Yeah, we could call Mr. Nowak. Can you just give me a moment to get him on the line?
Yeah, do you think
Sure.
this is gonna be your last witness?
I believe it will be.
Okay, we might have a rebuttal witness is the only reason I asked, but thank you very much. Okay.
All right, I think I'm going to need to take a break too, just quickly. I'm getting a note on my computer that IT needs me to reboot my computer. They decided that today would be a good day to do it,
Oh,
and it's
please
going to
don't,
shut
Judge.
down
Please tell
in
them.
40 minutes.
Tell Miss McIntyre to go jump off in the lake. That's mine. McElroy to go jump in the lake. That's my advice.
So I'm going to have to go off the record a minute, reboot, and come back in.
You're not gonna tell her to go jump in the lake?
I will tell her the next time I see her.
Judge,
Thanks, that's a promise.
should I
All right.
should I plan on getting Mr. Nowak on the line
Yeah.
then?
It shouldn't take long for me to reboot. I think it's just a quick system reboot.
Okay,
We'll
so
check
why-
in at 4 o'clock.
Why don't we do 4:05 to make
4
sure?
or 5.
Okay.
All right, Judge.
You need to log off.
Do we need to log off, Judge?